Get ready, Padres fans. It's time for the EcoWater SoCal Padres pregame show on the Padres Radio Network.
Tatis at third, 2 outs. Fernando takes off. He's going to steal home without a play.
Coming up, we'll have a recap of the previous Padres game, a preview of today's starting pitching matchup, and our keys to the game. Plus, we'll hear from manager Mike Shildt. From the Padres Radio Network, here's Sam Levitt.
San Diego Padres baseball coming up on 97.3 The Fan and the Padres Radio Network. Today the Padres take on the Cleveland Guardians in the second game of a 3-game series. Our starting pitching matchup today for the Guardians, right-hander Gavin Williams, and for the Padres, right-hander Dylan Cease. Hi, good everyone. Sam Levitt with you inside our San Diego studios. First pitch coming up at 4:10 p.m. at Progressive Field in Cleveland, Ohio. Coming up in the next 50 minutes, you'll hear from Padres manager Mike Shildt, plus we hear from today's starting pitcher Dylan Cease, Padres reliever Jeremiah Estrada, and in just a few minutes we catch up with Padres radio voice Jesse Agler. But first, let's set the table, brought to you by Fraser Farms Market. Set your table with the highest quality of natural and organic products from Fraser Farms Market, a San Diego original since 1971 with 3 locations, La Mesa, Vista, and Oceanside. Padres are 50-50 through 100 games entering today. The Padres have lost 7 of their last 8 games, and even after a rough stretch, the Padres still entered today just 1 game out of the third and final wildcard spot in the National League. Padres have not been below 500 since June 21st when they were 39-40. They'll try to avoid falling below 500 here today. Meanwhile, the Guardians come in the best record in the American League at 59-37. Guardians lost 4 of 5 games before the All-Star break began. They bounced back with a win last night. The Guardians are 31-11 at home this season. Can the Padres find a way to beat the Guardians today? Well, last night didn't go so well. Let's take a look back.
How did the Padres fare in their last game? Let's take a look back with our Padres Rewind. Presented by Hamul Casino. With thrilling slots and tables and all the best rewards, Hamul Casino has all the fun you're looking for. Hamul Casino. Fun above all else.
The starting pitchers were great in the first half of last night's game. Matt Waldron for San Diego, Tanner Bybee for Cleveland. Through the top of the 5th inning, Bybee had allowed just a couple of hits and 1 runner on second base. Waldron had also allowed just a couple of hits and hadn't even allowed a runner to reach second base. That brought us to the bottom half of the 5th inning. Still a scoreless game. David Fry led off against Waldron with a single. He moved to second base on a sacrifice bunt, went to third base on a wild pitch. That set the table for Daniel Schneemann.
3-1 pitch from Waldron, line into center field. That's a base hit. Fry will come in to score. Schneemann going to try and stretch for 2. Merrill's throw not in time. An RBI double for the Chula Vista kid, and the Guardians have the first run of the night.
That was all Waldron allowed in the 5th inning. He went 6 innings, gave up just that 1 run. Padres still trailed 1-0 going bottom 8. Stephen Kolek trying to keep it that way. He could not. 2 singles, then a bunt popped up from Angel Martinez. Manny Machado couldn't field it cleanly. It was a bunt single to load the bases with nobody out. Jose Ramirez was next.
Here's the 0-1 to Ramirez. Swung on, bounced up the middle, into center, and a base hit. Naylor has scored. Kwan is on his way. Throw from Merrill is coming. The tag. Oh, he had him, but the ball came out. Higashioka went to apply the tag. Had he squeezed it, Kwan would have been out. But the ball trickled behind home plate. 2-run score, and the Guardian lead is 3-0 as Jose Ramirez cashes in the opportunity.
That was it for Kolek. Austin Davis came in. He hit a batter to load the bases again. He walked a batter. That brought in a run to make it 4-0. After Davis got the first out, the Padres then went to righty Sean Reynolds. Reynolds gave up a 2-run single to Brian Rocchio to make it 6-0. A sac fly later in the inning for Tyler Freeman. It made it 7-0. Cleveland putting together a 6-run bottom half of the 8th inning. The big story, though, for the Padres last night, the lack of offense. Padres had just 4 hits all night, 2 at-bats with runners in scoring position, only 1 at-bat with a runner in scoring position through the first 8 innings of the game. And with all that said, the final score yesterday in Cleveland, the Guardians 7 and the Padres nothing. Padres have lost 7 of their last 8 games, and we'll see if they can bounce back here today in Cleveland. Speaking of Cleveland, let's go to Progressive Field.
Let's go inside the Padres broadcast booth for a deep dive on today's matchup from Jesse Agler in our Padres game preview on the Padres Radio Network.
Jesse, before we get to the Padres and baseball, I just want to know, how was your All-Star break? I hope you had at least a little time to relax and recharge the batteries.
There was a little bit of that, maybe, sort of. It's a young family situation, so you take it as it comes. But it was nice, I would say, being around the kids, getting to hang out with them. Not necessarily in the bucket of relaxation, but it was very, very nice. And, it's one of those things, I think, more than anything else. It's just like getting away from the mentality of a baseball game the next day.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because even when we have an off day during the season, as we have, coming up on Monday in Washington, it's like my brain, and I'm sure this is, even more true for the players and the staff, it's like you're thinking about the next day because there's a game the next day. And so to have a couple of days where there is no game the next day is really, for me at least, I think the key component of the All-Star break. It allows you to really actually have something of a mental reset. So definitely enjoyed that. Was definitely kind of bored by the end of it. All right, let's go back to baseball. And, shook the rust off a little bit last night. And we'll have at it again here tonight in Cleveland.
Yeah, really good point. During the season, it seems like every day is kind of centered around that first pitch time. Or in my case, the hour before first pitch. And you got to be ready for that moment, right? Ready to go every single day. So you're right. It's nice to get away from that schedule, at least for a few days. Let's talk about last night's game in the context of what the Padres have been doing lately. Obviously, a very quiet night offensively, Jesse. No runs on 4 hits. And I guess the positive from last night was that Matt Waldron continued to be really good. Obviously, the negative was that the Padres offensively sort of picked up right where they left off before the All-Star break. To you, is it just an offensive lull, or is it something more concerning than that?
It's a fair question, and it's probably the question right now with the Padres. And I'll give you an unsatisfying answer, which is we'll see, right?
Right.
We'll see how it goes today. We'll see how it goes tomorrow. We'll see how it goes in Washington, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. Because you're right. I mean, if you're going to step back and look at it, it did look similar, though I would say not identical to some of the struggles they had, on the homestand, particularly maybe the back half of the homestand. They had at times what looked to me on the homestand, I don't want to say an over-aggressive approach, but a more aggressive approach than maybe, we had seen at times this year. And it didn't work on the homestand. And, that doesn't mean it's the right thing or the wrong thing. It just means it didn't work there. Yesterday, there was a lot more patience that they showed. And you saw it right off the bat, right? I mean, just in the first inning alone, Cronenworth threw an 8-pitch walk. Manny had a 9-pitch at bat. And, they ran Tanner Bybee's pitch count all the way up to close to 30 in the first inning. That was not necessarily something they've been doing as of late. And so he said, all right, the approach is looking a little bit different here tonight. We'll see if that continues. And it did. They took some really good at-bats over the course of the game, but they just weren't able to get it, turned into anything.
Right.
And so, look, you don't want to get shut out, and you certainly don't want to pat him on the back for, running the pitch count of it if it doesn't, turn into runs and hits, because it is, of course, a run-scoring competition, not a make the other guy throw as many pitches as possible competition. But there was something there where I was like, all right, I liked the idea, and maybe it just wasn't their night. The reality is, if that game doesn't get away in the 8th inning, maybe you look back, it's 1-0 or 2-0, and you go, man, that was a tough game, really well pitched. It is what it is. And I think maybe just kind of the final score made it feel a little bit different than it actually was, which is a little bit weird, I know, but that was kind of my takeaway from it. So, look, we'll see. Gavin Williams tonight on the mound for Cleveland is a guy they've never seen before. Is that good or bad? We'll find out. He's a guy that will walk people, so if they go back to that, more, patient, longer at-bat approach, like they had yesterday, maybe they'll get some guys on. And, look, the idea against the Guardians certainly is to beat the starters, because we saw last night just how good this bullpen is. Might be the best bullpen in baseball. And, a couple really, really explosive arms that they're able to throw at you. We didn't even see Clase, of course, who's the best of the bunch. So, I'm very interested, as everybody else is, of course, to kind of see how it goes here in the next couple days.
You mentioned Gavin Williams on the mound for Cleveland today, Dylan Cease on the mound for San Diego, and Dylan's last start before the All-Star break, Jesse, he was just about as good as what we've seen in a while. Dominant, 11 strikeouts, 1 hit given up in 6 innings against a good Atlanta lineup. And I think when you look at the priorities for the Padres in the second half, Dylan Cease being some version of what we saw that last time out, that's right up there amongst the most important things that could happen for this team.
Yeah, and look, he had no-hit stuff in that start against the Braves. I mean, the only hit was an infield single, and, I won't get greedy and say it has to look that good, but if he can be a guy that's able to keep you into games and consistently throw 6 or 7 innings, that's what's going to be important, because Matt Waldron has proven to be a guy who can consistently give you 6 or 7 innings. And if you have 2 of those kind of guys in the rotation, that's good. If you have 3, that's great, and I think Michael King fits into that bucket, and so now all of a sudden it's like, all right, we're not asking too much of the bullpen, and, if you have 3 guys in the rotation, hopefully Joe Musgrove comes back sooner rather than later, who are able to keep you in games. I trust this offense in those situations more often than not to get the job done. So, Cease, he doesn't have to be as totally dominant as he was against the Braves. Not that I'm going to turn it away, of course, over the course of the rest of the year. But he does have to be a guy you can kind of lean on and get, some innings out of. And he's obviously more than capable of that. He's one of the most talented pitchers in baseball.
No doubt about it. Jesse, as always, good stuff. We'll talk to you and Tony coming up at the top of the hour, 4 p.m. here in San Diego. Thanks so much.
You got it, Sam.
All right, that is Jesse Ackler joining us on our pregame coverage as we get ready for today's game on the Padres Radio Network. Again, Dylan Cease on the mound for San Diego, Gavin Williams on the mound for Cleveland. A good pitching matchup. Williams is a good young right-hander. Cease, obviously, a very good right-hander in his own right. A lot to do before first pitch. When we come back, we'll hear from Padres manager Mike Shildt. We'll have an update on Joe Musgrove, who threw another bullpen earlier today in Cleveland, so you're going to want to stay tuned for that here. The latest update on Joe. You heard Jesse just mention Joe Musgrove, and we talked about it with Tony Gwynn Jr. yesterday. Look, you can say a lot of things about the Padres in the second half of the season, what it will take for this team to make the postseason. Getting healthy, getting guys like Joe back, Fernando Tatis Jr. back, potentially Yu Darvish back. That's a really big part of the equation for this team. So we'll hear an update from Mike Shildt on Joe Musgrove when we come back. Also, a little bit later, we revisit what Dylan Cease had to say after that last start of the first half against Atlanta. We hear from Jeremiah Estrada, and we also get a little insight on the Guardians from Mandy Bell of MLB.com. First pitch coming up at 4:10 in Cleveland, right here on the Padres Radio Network. Padres baseball coming up on 97.3 The Fan and the Padres radio network. First pitch in Cleveland at 4:10 p.m. local time. Dylan Cease on the mound for the Padres. Gavin Williams on the mound for the Guardians. Sam Levitt with you inside our San Diego studios. Welcome back to the EcoWater SoCal Padres pregame show on the Padres radio network. Your water perfected. EcoWater SoCal. Your water should be perfect. Find them online at EcoWaterSoCal.com. Let's hear from the Padre manager before the middle game of this three-game set.
Let's pull up a seat in the manager's office and hear from Padres manager Mike Shildt. Presented by Sinley Food. Spice up your culinary life.
Before we hear from Mike Shildt, a quick look at the Padres lineup. Today looks like this. Luis Ariz at first base leading off. Jurickson Profar in left field batting second. Jake Cronenworth, the DH, batting third. Manny Machado at third base batting cleanup. Xander Bogaerts at second base batting fifth. Jackson Merrill in center batting sixth. David Peralta in right batting seventh. The shortstop Hassan Kim batting eighth. And Luis Campusano behind the plate for the Padres today, batting ninth. Kyle Higashioka started yesterday with Matt Waldron on the mound. Dylan Cease throwing to Campusano for a second consecutive start. Here was Mike Shildt earlier today on the playing time right now behind the plate.
I think, we've gotten a nice rhythm to start. I mean, I think it'll remain fluid, but, with Waldron and, Higgy being so good together, that's worked. Campy's been really good with Cease. That's worked. And then we'll just continue to move forward with the next, other three guys.
Campy's caught a lot of King as well.
They both caught Kinger. So, yeah, I mean, it's we'll let you know. Something to look forward to.
Is that the hot hand? Is it?
I think it's a combination of things. Yeah, hot hand's important.
Yeah, also, you've got certain guys that they're catching, but then also day after night.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. That's why it's so fluid.
So that was Mike Shildt on the catching situation right now. Higashioka catching yesterday, Campusano catching today. You would highly assume that it'll be Higgy behind the plate tomorrow, a day game after a night game. Remember, 3 hours ahead in Cleveland. So tonight's game is at 7:10 in Cleveland. So a true day game after a night game tomorrow on Sunday. We do have a fairly significant update on Joe Musgrove. We learned earlier this week that Joe threw a bullpen on Wednesday before the Padres went to Cleveland to start this road trip. As we know, he threw mostly fastballs. Sounded like he mixed in a couple of spinning pitches, if you will, towards the very end of that bullpen session. Here was the latest update on Joe from Mike Shildt earlier today.
Joe had a really positive day today. Threw his second bullpen, 30 pitches-ish. Threw some breaking balls, so he spun some balls. All reports from Ruben and the medical staff, Scott Hacker, our rehab, everything was really positive, and he felt really good, and it came out good. So it was an encouraging day.
When you say spun some breaking balls, at what point in this does it become a full effort, full velocity, start to look more like we're used to seeing it?
Yeah, I think we're clearly getting closer. He's going to throw another side, it looks like, in probably 4 days. I think the intensity level was ramped up from the previous one. Again, the fact he's throwing breaking balls speaks to the intensity going up. And, he was... I'm not a big velocity guy, but his velocity, he started to track some velocity, and his velocity was pretty good in the 90s. So a lot of favorable day for Joe.
Too early for timelines?
Too early for, definitive timelines. We're going to move on to the next, side session in 4 days and evaluate from there.
So, all in all, I think very positive news on Joe Musgrove. We'll see when that next side session is exactly, and we'll keep you posted on what we hear about Joe Musgrove. But no doubt about it, last week or so, some good news on Joe, some good news on Fernando Tatis Jr. as well. We'll dive a little bit deeper into Fernando's latest news. Coming up a little bit later, we'll hear from Mike Shildt on that. If you missed it yesterday, what Mike Shildt had to say, the latest updates on Fernando Tatis Jr. First pitch coming up at 4:10 in Cleveland. Let's tell you who's hot, who's not.
Which player is locked in at the dish? Who needs to kick things up another notch? This is Who's Hot, Who's Not on the Padres Radio Network.
Now, I'll be perfectly honest with you, the hot category for the Padres right now, nobody is scorching hot with the way they've hit the last 7-8 games, to be honest. But it's not really in my nature to leave the hot category totally empty. So, David Peralta, we'll keep him in there today. Entered yesterday, 10 for his last 30, a home run, 2 doubles, 5 RBIs. Went 0 for 3, though, yesterday. So, we'll keep David Peralta in the hot category, but he's sort of warm right now. The Padres don't do a lot offensively today. Tomorrow, we may be looking at a rare empty hot category. As far as the not category, unfortunately, that one is not too difficult to pick out some guys right now. Jackson Merrill, 7 for 46 in the month of July, a span of 12 games. Merrill has walked only once so far this month. He's also striking out more. He struck out 16 times this month. He struck out just 16 times combined in his 87 at-bats before July began. So Merrill going through a little bit of a rut right now, but as we know, he's had an all-star caliber rookie season. Just a little bit of a slump right now. Cold July to this point. Ha-Sung Kim hitting 194 in 12 games this month. And finally, rounding out the not category today, Jurickson Profar, just 5 for 32 in his last 8 games. That's a 152 batting average in that span. And that's a look at who's hot, who's not. And we will, when we come back, dive even deeper into the Padres' offensive struggles as of late. When we come back as well, we hear from Jeremiah Estrada. We'll hear from Dylan Cease. We'll also hear from Mandy Bell of MLB.com. If you missed the latest update on Fernando Tatis Jr., we'll hear from Mike Shildt on that as well. Game 2 of this 3-game series coming up at 4:10 p.m. in Cleveland, Ohio. Our pregame coverage continues after this. Our EcoWater SoCal Padres pregame show continues here on the Padres Radio Network. Sam Levitt with you inside our San Diego studios. First pitch coming up at 4:10 in Cleveland, Ohio. Game 2 of this 3-game series and this 9-game road trip as the Padres begin the second half of 2024. Padres through 100 games, sitting right at 50-50. Padres trying to avoid dropping below 500 for the first time in nearly a month. We'll see if they can do that here today with right-hander Dylan Cease on the mound. And we'll revisit what Dylan had to say after that last really terrific outing against the Braves last weekend at Petco Park. That's coming up in just a little bit. Let's update you on Fernando Tatis Jr. and more with our injury report.
Who's in? Who's out? This is the Bada Fulkerson Injury Report, presented by San Diego's Bulldog Injury Attorneys, who hope you're never in an accident. But if you are, make Bada Fulkerson the first call you make. Hit them up 24/7 at badafulkerson.com.
As you probably know by now, Wandy Peralta was put on the 15-day IL right before the All-Star break with a left adductor strain, so Peralta is still missing from the Padres bullpen. We heard the latest update a little bit earlier on Joe Musgrove, who threw another bullpen today. Everything favorable from that bullpen, so good news on Joe. We told you yesterday, and we heard this yesterday from Mike Shildt, but we'll play it again in case you missed it. Fernando Tatis Jr. had an MRI during the All-Star break. The results were encouraging, and sounds like Tatis has resumed at least a little bit of baseball activity. Here was the full update yesterday from Mike Shildt on the latest MRI for Fernando Tatis Jr.
The MRI was favorable. I mean, it's still there, the actual, stress reaction. But a lot of the swelling and the fluid is pretty well gone. So that is, obviously a positive. So he's able to swing the bat, do some light lower half exercises. We're going to ease him into it. And then do some more imaging at some point soon. And then, relative to that, we'll start the ramp up.
What does that ramp up look like when it starts?
It won't take long. It really won't. It'll be probably similar to what we did with Bogey, in a sense of like getting some people up, getting a lot of at bats on the field, getting his defensive work situated, and then we'll evaluate with him about how many at bats he needs beyond that.
That was Mike Shildt, the latest update on Fernando Tatis Jr. and the MRI, and much like we heard earlier about Joe Musgrove, a positive update on Fernando. So those are the latest updates on Joe. Fernando, like we said, Wandy Peralta on the IL right now, most recently out of the Padres bullpen, and those are the most necessary updates on our injury report here today. Well, one guy we did not see in yesterday's game, the series opener in Cleveland, was Padres right-hander Jeremiah Estrada, who, as we know, a terrific first half, clearly established himself as maybe the primary setup guy in the bullpen in front of Robert Suarez. And you look at Estrada's numbers overall in the first half, they were terrific. He had that little stretch where he was dealing with an illness and lost a ton of weight, where things got a little bit shakier on the mound. But you look at the way he finished the first half of the year, 9 outings between June 24th to July 14th, a 0.93 ERA. So really good to see as Jeremiah started to feel better. The results on the mound got better as well. I caught up with Jeremiah Estrada inside the Padres clubhouse before the All-Star break, and we reflected on his first half.
It's been great. I'm more than happy than to just be on this team with a group of good guys. The team has been absolutely remarkable as in welcome me to the new team. And it's been fun, having these veterans that are here to look up to, having these guys who are doing absolutely fantastic, like Mero and Suarez and Manny, and just seeing what they've been through and trying to just be like them,
As far as what you've learned, how you've progressed throughout this first half, what is the biggest takeaway you've had as far as learning how to pitch kind of day in, day out here in the major leagues?
There's a lot. It's all about just seeing what these guys do, seeing what Yu Darvish does, seeing what Joe Musgrove does, those are just icons right there, guys who just live and breathe for this game, it's just what I try to do and what I try to be like at times, just seeing how Joe is a complete leader to this organization and also to this clubhouse, and just seeing how Suarez just has his routine, and it's just something to learn from. I mean, no, I'm not I'm not perfect, but to see these guys, to see what they've done throughout their career has been amazing, and I'm trying to just be like them.
That was Padres reliever Jeremiah Estrada inside the Padres clubhouse before the All-Star break, reflecting on his first half of the season. The good news for the Padres, both today and tomorrow, to finish up this series, they should have Estrada, Adrian Morejon, Robert Suarez, all available today and tomorrow. And remember, the Padres have an off day on Monday, so Mike Shildt can be pretty loose, pretty liberal with how he uses that bullpen the next couple of days, something that the Padres could certainly use to their advantage in the rest of this series. Now, with that said, of course, Stephen Vogt, the Guardians manager, didn't have to use their really, really great closer, Emmanuel Clase, in last night's game either. So Clase should be available tomorrow, Sunday, and of course here today, and Suarez for the Padres also available today and Sunday. So should be interesting to see what happens with these bullpens. And we'll talk a little bit more about the Guardians bullpen a little bit later on in our pregame coverage as well. Let's take a full look at the out-of-town scoreboard, tell you what's going on around the big leagues on this Saturday.
Let's take a trip around the bigs and tell you about the scores you need to know in our out-of-town scoreboard. Presented by Jensen Meat, where great taste meets integrity.
We have a number of finals already today. The Rays beat up on the Yankees 9-1 in New York earlier today. Randy Arozarena and Isaac Paredes both hit 2 home runs in that game for the Rays as they beat up on the Yanks. Game 1 of a doubleheader in Atlanta today. A tie game going into the 10th inning. Braves won it 3-2 in 10 on an Ozzie Albies walk-off sacrifice fly. Tigers beat the Blue Jays 7-3 in Toronto. Jake Rogers, a grand slam in that game for Detroit. A's beat up on the Angels 8-2 in Oakland. We've got a couple of games going on right now. Mets are leading the Marlins 1-0 in Miami in the 9th inning. Edwin Diaz on the mound right now for New York. 1 out, nobody on in the 9th inning. So the Mets a couple of wins away, or I should say a couple of outs away from a win in Miami. Phillies and the Pirates are just underway in Pittsburgh, first inning at PNC Park in Pittsburgh. No score there. Everything else is starting in a little bit or a little bit later on this evening. Reds and the Nationals in D.C. at 3:45. Orioles and the Rangers in Arlington at 4:05. White Sox and the Royals in Kansas City at 4:10. Brewers and the Twins in Minnesota at 4:10. Diamondbacks and the Cubs in Chicago at 4:15. Red Sox and the Dodgers in L.A. at 4:15. Cardinals and the Braves, game 2 of that doubleheader at 4:20 in Atlanta. Giants and the Rockies in Colorado at 5:10. Astros and the Mariners in Seattle later on this evening at 6:40. Good pitching matchup there. Framber Valdez on the mound for Houston. George Kirby on the mound for Seattle. And that's a look at our full out-of-town scoreboard on this Saturday across the major leagues. Well, earlier this week here on 97.3 The Fan, Mandy Bell, Guardians beat reporter for MLB.com, spoke with Gwynn and Chris about a number of different topics involving the Guardians. We heard from Mandy yesterday on the pregame coverage about Jose Ramirez, about Guardians pitching and their expectations entering this season. The bottom line is this: nobody really saw the Guardians nearly 100 games into their season having the best record in the American League. And one of the reasons the Guardians have been so good this year, well, no doubt the guy at the top of their lineup, Steven Kwan, who leads the major leagues coming into today with a .354 batting average. He has had a terrific season. He led off the All-Star game for the American League. Here was Mandy Bell earlier this week on Steven Kwan.
I know Kwan was excited to see a rise at the All-Star game, to just tell him that he's his favorite baseball player, because they're so similar. Wow. I mean, the approach there, it's just this old school type of worry about batting average type of guy, and you just don't see that anymore. But They're both excellent at it, and Quan has really come out of his shell this year. We knew that this was sort of in there because of his unbelievable contact ability at the plate. Like, his hand-eye coordination is unlike any person on the planet. And so the way that he's able to just grind through at bats and rarely ever strike out and constantly foul things off until he's able to get something to hit. It's not surprising that this is what's the result, but the most surprising part is that he's added a little more power this year, and he's already had his career high in homers before we even hit the All-Star break. I think he's up to 8 now. So to have that mix in there but not sacrifice any of the batting average, sacrifice any of the swing and miss, the unbelievable chase rates, all that type of stuff, to be able to add power and not sacrifice anything has been really impressive to watch. So, I mean, it really just doesn't get better for a leadoff guy than guys like Arraez and Quan, who can always get on base. But so for the AL, there was no question in my mind that he would be leading off for the All-Star game.
That was Mandy Bell, Guardians beat reporter for MLB.com. Did a really good job talking about the Guardians earlier this week here on 97.3 The Fan. And Stephen Kwan back in the Guardians lineup here today, batting leadoff and playing left field. First pitch coming up at 4:10 in Cleveland. Let's give you our keys to the game.
How will the Padres unlock a victory in today's game? These are the keys to the game. Presented by Honor Buick GMC Hummer in National City.
Key number 1, a strong start tonight here at the plate. Offensively, let's focus on the Padres offense. I'm going to be honest with you, the reason that little headline of the keys sounded kind of weird because I forgot to update it. I said yesterday, a strong start to the second half at the plate. I never wrote anything different, so I kind of got into it, and I was like, that doesn't make sense. So let me think of one on the spot right now. Wake up the offense. How about that for the headline? All right, let's get into it. Padres have lost 7 of 8 games. They've only scored 17 runs total in that span of 8 games. That's an average of just a little more than 2 runs per game. In fact, if you eliminate the first game of that stretch, the Padres are averaging under 2 runs in their last 7 games. Not going to work. More numbers on the Padres offense. They've been shut out twice in the last 5 games. The Padres have had 2 or less at-bats with runners in scoring position in 3 out of their last 7 games. The Padres are hitting just .199 as a team in the last 7 games. That's a season low over any 7-game stretch for the Padres this year. Bottom line, I can't say it simpler than this. The offense has got to wake up. They got to be better. That's key number 1. Key number 2. Dylan Cease dealing against a Guardians lineup that has seen him a lot. Dylan Cease spent a while in the American League Central. This will be his 13th career start against the Guardians. A number of guys in this Cleveland lineup have seen him a lot, and they have good numbers against him. Stephen Kwan, 7 for 19 career against Cease, 2 extra base hits. Josh Naylor, 6 for 20, couple of extra base hits. Andres Jimenez, 9 for 16 with 3 extra base hits. Will Brennan, 4 for 8 with a home run and a double. So the key here today for the Padres and Cease, how does he fare against the lineup and a team that is very familiar with his game? That's key number 2. Keep an eye on that today. For as good as Dylan Cease can be, this is an occasion where the Guardians know him well and they've had success against him. That brings us to key number 3, limiting Jose Ramirez. Ramirez had a key 2-run single in the 8th inning last night. He is a major run producer. This guy's one of the best players in all of baseball that not enough people talk about. Ramirez now has 79 RBIs this season. He's on pace for more than 130. The only player with more RBIs in baseball right now, Aaron Judge, who has 86 of them. Jose Ramirez limiting him today. Whether that's Dylan Cease, whether that's the Padres bullpen, that's key number 3, and that's a look at our keys to the game. When we come back on our EcoWater SoCal Padres pregame show, we talk about the Guardians bullpen and how good they've been as of late and really throughout the 2024 season. We also break down today's pitching matchup between Dylan Cease and Gavin Williams, and we revisit what Dylan Cease had to say after that terrific start against Atlanta to wrap up the first half. First pitch coming up at 4:10 in Cleveland, Ohio. Our pregame coverage continues after this. Our EcoWater SoCal Padres pregame show continues here on the Padres Radio Network. Sam Levitt with you inside our San Diego studios. We go out to Jesse Agler and Tony Gwynn Jr. in just a little under 7 minutes. They'll have first pitch coming up at 4:10 p.m. Let's tell you what to watch for in today's game.
What's the one thing Sam Levitt will be keeping his eye on in today's game? This is What to Watch For. Presented by Genesis Home Improvements, San Diego's trusted painting, roofing, and window company. Save 15% today on a new beginning for your home. Visit GenesisHomeImprovementsSD.com.
Will the Padres be able to do much against this outstanding Cleveland bullpen? Last night, the Guardians bullpen picked up right where they left off before the All-Star break, throwing 3 1/3 scoreless innings. Guardians relievers have thrown 15 consecutive scoreless innings and lead the majors with a 2.60 ERA this season. Some of the guys that have really excelled: Hunter Gaddis, 17 straight scoreless innings. Emmanuel Clase, an 0.81 ERA, is the lowest in the majors among anyone with at least 30 innings of work. Cade Smith has been great. He threw a scoreless inning and a third last night. Bottom line is this: it's baseball in 2024. You're going to face this bullpen quite a bit in the next couple of days. Can the Padres get runs against those guys in, let's say, a close late game? That's what I'm looking for here today. Can the Padres do some damage against a really, really good Guardians bullpen? That's what to watch for in today's game. Well, on the mound for the Padres here today, right-hander Dylan Cease. Like we said earlier, Cease was absolutely terrific in his last start to wrap up the first half against Atlanta. 6 innings, no runs, 1 hit, 11 Ks against Atlanta last weekend. Here was Dylan after the game reflecting on that start.
Throwing strikes is the biggest one. I did walk a couple guys, but just pounding the zone and being aggressive.
Let's talk about a couple of those walks. In the 4th inning, you get into trouble. How were you able to navigate yourself out of that situation?
I think just focus and attack. You know, it's my misses didn't feel like they were very big, so I kind of just felt like I was in a good spot, and basically just don't panic and keep attacking.
2 really nice outings to finish the first half. How do you feel like this sets you up moving forward into the second half?
Yeah, it's great. I mean, today was what I've been really looking for, so it's I'm happy it happened, and we got to keep it rolling.
And we'll see if Dylan Cease can keep it rolling here today. Let's dive into that pitching matchup between Cease and Gavin Williams.
Let's take a look at who's on the bump today with our starting pitching preview. Presented by Chimney Sweeps, Inc., San Diego's trusted chimney and fireplace service company for 40 years. Call Chimney Sweeps, Inc. at 1-800-CHIMNEY or book an inspection online at chimneysweepsinc.com.
Dylan Cease on the mound for San Diego, 8-8, a 3.99 ERA in 20 starts so far this season. His 149 strikeouts before the All-Star break set a new Padres franchise record. Those 149 Ks lead the National League. His last start a week ago against Atlanta, like we said, 6 scoreless innings, gave up just 1 hit, struck out 11. Cease has a 3.96 ERA in 12 career starts against the Guardians, a 5.19 ERA in 7 career starts in Cleveland. Meanwhile, on the mound for Cleveland, right-hander Gavin Williams, 24 years old, 23rd overall pick in the 2021 draft out of East Carolina University. A big guy. He's 6'6", 250. 3 starts so far this year, 0-1, a 3.77 ERA. Began the season on the IL with an elbow issue. Gave up 5 runs in 4 innings during his season debut against the White Sox in early July, but he's been better as of late, giving up just 1 earned run in 10-plus innings during his past couple of starts. You've been listening to the EcoWater SoCal Padres pregame show on the Padres Radio Network. EcoWater SoCal, your water should be perfect. Find them online at EcoWaterSoCal.com. When we come back, Jesse and Tony have the full starting lineups, first pitch, and all the play-by-play on the Padres Radio Network.